The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent as Catherine Cole walked to the speaking platform. 12 alien species watched her from their seats arranged in a half-circle. Some looked at her with bored expressions. Others seemed amused. A few did not bother to hide their contempt. Catherine was used to this. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 43 years ago. In a galaxy where some species had traveled between stars for 10,000 years, humans were still considered children, newcomers, primitives who had barely learned to leave their own planet. She stopped at the center of the platform and looked around the chamber. Her face showed no emotion. Her hands were steady at her sides. "Representatives of the Council," she began, her voice calm and clear. "I am here to deliver Earth's formal response to the Zarathi Empire's declaration of war." From the Zarathi section, a large reptilian figure rose to his feet. High Commander Vexral was over 7 feet tall, his scales a deep green that shifted to black at the edges. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits, and when he smiled, rows of sharp teeth became visible. "Response?" Vexral laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. "What response can your little species possibly offer? Surrender now, and we may show mercy. Your people will serve as workers in our mining colonies. It is more than you deserve." Several other species laughed along with him. The Zarathi Empire had conquered 17 worlds in the past century. Their fleet numbered in the thousands. They had never lost a war. Catherine waited for the laughter to die down. Then she spoke again. "Earth does not surrender. We never have. We never will." She paused and looked directly at Vexral. "This is our warning to the Zarathi Empire. Turn back your fleet. Do not come to our world. If you attack Earth, you will not find the easy victory you expect. You will find something else entirely." More laughter filled the chamber. The Zarathi representative shook his massive head. "A warning? You dare to warn us?" Vexral stepped forward, his clawed hands spreading wide. "Human, let me explain something to you. My fleet has 800 warships. Your defensive fleet has fewer than 200. We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. Your little planet will fall within days." "Perhaps," Catherine said, her voice did not change. "Or perhaps you will learn what happens when you threaten our home." She turned and walked back to her seat without another word. In the highest row of seats, Elder Counselor Thrain watched the exchange with great interest. He was a member of the Veleth species, ancient beings who had seen empires rise and fall across thousands of years. Thrain himself was over 900 years old. He had witnessed dozens of wars, hundreds of conflicts, the death of entire civilizations. Something about the human ambassador bothered him. She was not afraid. He had seen this moment before with other species. When a great power threatened the smaller one, the smaller species always showed fear. They pleaded, they bargained, they sought allies. Even when they tried to appear brave, the fear was there in their eyes, in the trembling of their hands. Catherine Cole showed none of this. She stood before the mightiest military force in the known galaxy and delivered her warning as if she were stating the weather, as if the outcome was already decided, and it was not what the Zarathi expected. This was either stupidity or something else entirely. After the session ended, Thrain called his young aide to his private chamber. "I want you to find everything in the archives about human history," Thrain said. "Everything about their wars, their conflicts, how they fight." The aide looked confused. "Counselor, they are a young species. They have only been in space for a few decades. What could they possibly know about—" "Just do it," Thrain interrupted. His voice was soft but firm. "Do it now, and bring me the files before morning." The aide bowed and left quickly. Thrain walked to his window and looked out at the city below. Ships from 100 worlds filled the sky, species that had fought and died and made peace over thousands of years. The galaxy had seen much blood spilled. But something told him that humanity was different. He did not know why. He could not explain it. But in 900 years he had learned to trust his instincts. Far across the galaxy, on Earth, Admiral Samuel Briggs stood in the command center of Earth Defense Command. He was a tall man in his 60s, with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. 3 stars gleamed on his collar. Behind him, dozens of officers worked at their stations, monitoring the approaching threat. "Sir," a young officer called out, "the Zorathi fleet has entered the outer edges of our system. 806 ships confirmed. They will reach Earth in approximately 12 days. Briggs nodded slowly. He had known this day would come. They had prepared for it since the moment humanity made first contact with the galaxy. They had watched other species fall to conquerors. They had studied the Zorathi and their tactics. They had built and planned and waited. "Begin activation of Project Prometheus," Briggs said. "All phases." The officers moved quickly to carry out his orders. Across the solar system, hidden installations came to life. Weapons that no alien knew about powered up in the darkness of space. Ships that had been disguised as cargo vessels revealed their true purpose. Earth was not as weak as the galaxy believed. Briggs walked to the main display screen. It showed Earth floating in space, blue and green and beautiful. His home. The home of 8 billion people who were counting on him to protect them. He thought about his daughter, who lived in Chicago with her family. His grandson, who was only 5 years old and loved to look at the stars. All the ordinary people who woke up each morning, went to work, loved their families, and dreamed of the future. The Zorathi thought they were coming to conquer a primitive world. They thought humans would surrender or die quickly. They were wrong. Briggs picked up a communication device and connected to Ambassador Cole on Vareth Prime. "Ambassador, how did they react?" Catherine's voice came through clearly. "They laughed, Admiral, just as we expected." It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who knew what was coming and had made peace with it. "Good. Let them laugh. Let them think we are weak and foolish. When they arrive, we will teach them the truth about humanity." He closed the connection and turned back to his officers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we have 12 days to prepare the welcome our guests deserve. Let's get to work." Across the galaxy, the Zorathi fleet moved toward Earth with absolute confidence. They had conquered so many worlds. This one would be no different. They had no idea how wrong they were. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The Zorathi Empire was going to invade Earth. Everyone wanted to watch. On 100 worlds, people gathered around screens and displays. Betting pools opened within hours. How long would Earth last? Most bets said 3 days. Some generous ones gave them a week. No one bet on humanity winning. That would be throwing money away. Entertainment networks sent their best journalists to cover the invasion. They wanted to document the fall of another primitive species. It made for good viewing. Audiences loved watching the mighty Zorathi crush their enemies. Siraven was one of these journalists. She was a young Veleth reporter, eager to make her name with this assignment. She arrived on Earth 5 days before the expected invasion and began interviewing the local population. She expected to find panic, fear, people trying to flee their planet. The usual signs of a species facing destruction. What she found instead confused her completely. Her first interview was with a factory worker named Danny Marsh. He was a thick man in his 40s, with rough hands and a friendly smile. Siraven found him at a bar after his shift ended, drinking beer with his co-workers. "Mr. Marsh," she said, her translator device converting her words to English. "The Zorathi fleet is coming. They have 800 warships. Your planet has fewer than 200. How do you feel about the coming invasion?" Danny took a long drink of his beer and shrugged. "How do I feel? I feel like I need another drink." His co-workers laughed. "But aren't you afraid?" Siraven pressed. "The Zorathi have never lost a war. They have conquered 17 worlds. Danny set down his glass and looked at her. His eyes were calm. Lady, let me tell you something. We humans have been killing each other for thousands of years. We've had wars that killed millions of people. We built weapons that could destroy our whole planet. We survived all of that. You think some lizards from space scare us? Another worker, a woman with short hair and grease stains on her clothes, spoke up. My grandfather fought in something called World War II. 70 million people died. 70 million. In one war. And we kept going. We rebuilt, we moved on. Sci-Fi did not understand. But the Zarathi have superior technology, superior numbers. Danny laughed. It was a strange laugh. Not happy, but not afraid either. Superior numbers? Lady, we've been outnumbered before. We've been outgunned before. It never stopped us. He leaned closer to her. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Those lizards are going to come here thinking this is going to be easy. And when it's not easy, when they start losing soldiers, when they realize we're not going to surrender, they're going to learn something important. They're going to learn that humans don't know how to give up. We never learned. It's not in our nature. Siraven recorded everything, but she did not believe it. This had to be foolish bravery. These people did not understand what was coming, or so she thought. Far from Earth, on Verith Prime, Elder Counselor Thrain sat in his private chamber reading the files his aide had gathered. He had been reading all night. His eyes were tired, but he could not stop. The humans had provided historical records when they joined the galactic community. No one had bothered to read them carefully. Why would they? Humans were primitives. Their history did not matter. Thrain was reading it now, and what he found made his blood run cold. He read about something called the Mongol Empire, a small group of warriors from the grasslands who conquered half a planet in a few decades. Their enemies outnumbered them 10-1, sometimes more. They won anyway. He read about the world wars, conflicts so massive that they killed tens of millions. Entire cities burned to ash, weapons of such terrible power that they could kill hundreds of thousands in a single flash of light. He read about smaller conflicts. Vietnam, where a tiny nation fought the most powerful country on Earth and did not break. Afghanistan, where empires went to die. The Middle East, where wars dragged on for decades with no end in sight. And through it all, one thing remained constant. Humans never gave up. They never surrendered. They fought and died and fought again. They invented new weapons, new tactics, new ways to kill their enemies. War was woven into their very nature. When morning came, Thrain was pale and shaken. He called his aide. Connect me to the Zarathi command ship. I must speak with High Commander Vexrol. When Vexrol's face appeared on the screen, he looked annoyed at the interruption. Counselor Thrain, what do you want? Thrain chose his words carefully. High Commander, I urge you to reconsider this invasion. I have been studying human history. They are not what they appear to be. Vexrol laughed. An old fool offering advice? I have conquered 17 worlds, Counselor. I do not need your wisdom. Please listen, Thrain insisted. These beings have fought wars that killed millions of their own kind. They have weapons capable of destroying entire cities. They have been at war with themselves for their entire existence. They are not soft. They are simply not at war at this moment. There is a difference. Enough. Vexrol waved a clawed hand dismissively. You have grown weak with age, Counselor. The humans are primitives with a small fleet and limited technology. This invasion will be over within days. The connection ended. Thrain sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. He had tried. He had done what he could. Now he could only watch. On Earth, Admiral Briggs stood on the bridge of the command station, orbiting the planet. Through the windows he could see the stars. Somewhere out there, the enemy was coming. General Patricia Webb stood beside him. She was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She commanded Earth's ground forces, the soldiers who would defend the planet if the enemy made it past the fleet. "The outer defense grid is active," she reported. "All hidden platforms are operational. The mines are deployed. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Briggs nodded slowly. "Casualties? We're expecting heavy losses, Admiral. No matter how well we do, this is going to hurt." "I know." Briggs looked at the stars. "But we didn't start this fight. We're just going to finish it." Webb allowed herself a small smile. "The troops are ready, sir. Every last one of them volunteered for this. They know what's at stake." "And the civilians?" "Shelters are prepared. Evacuation plans are in place. Everyone knows their role." She paused. "The funny thing is, sir, I haven't seen panic. I've seen people scared, sure, but I've also seen them angry, determined. They're not running. They're getting ready to fight." Briggs understood. This was what made humans different. When threatened, they did not flee. They stood their ground. They fought back. It was both their greatest strength and their greatest curse. "The Zarathi think this will be easy," he said quietly. "They think we'll break like the others did. They've never faced anything like us before." The first Zarathi ships entered sensor range. Briggs straightened his uniform and turned to his officers. "All stations, battle ready. Send a message to the fleet." He took a breath. "Tell them Earth remembers every war we've ever fought, every battle, every sacrifice. Tell them we didn't survive all of that just to surrender to a bunch of overgrown lizards. Tell them to make our ancestors proud." The message went out. Across the solar system, human ships and soldiers prepared for war. The Zarathi had no idea what they were about to face. The Zarathi fleet moved through the outer solar system with absolute confidence. 800 warships in perfect formation, their weapons charged, their crews eager for another easy conquest. High Commander Vexral stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the distant blue dot that was Earth grow larger on the screens. "Human vessel detected," an officer reported. "A single ship. They are broadcasting a message." Vexral smiled, showing his teeth. On screen, the face of Admiral Briggs appeared. He looked calm, almost bored. Behind him, officers moved quietly at their stations. "Zarathi fleet," Briggs said. "This is Admiral Samuel Briggs of Earth Defense Command. You are entering sovereign human space. You have been warned to turn back. This is your final chance. Leave now or face the consequences." Vexral laughed loudly. His bridge crew joined him. "Old man," the High Commander said, "I have 800 ships. You have less than 200. What consequences can you possibly offer?" Briggs's expression did not change. "I was hoping you would say that." The transmission ended. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire tactical display lit up with alerts. Weapons platforms hidden in the asteroid belt activated. They had been disguised as rocks, invisible to Zarathi sensors. Dozens of them, hundreds. They opened fire simultaneously. Kinetic projectiles traveling at incredible speed slammed into the Zarathi formation. Ships exploded without warning. In the first 90 seconds, 60 Zarathi vessels were destroyed, before they could even identify the targets. Vexral roared in fury. "Return fire! Find those platforms and destroy them!" His fleet scrambled to respond, but more surprises waited. Cloaked mines drifted through space, activating when ships came near. Another 40 vessels died in the explosions, and then the human fleet arrived. They came out of the darkness like wolves hunting sheep, not in a solid formation like the Zarathi expected, but scattered, moving in patterns that made no sense. Small destroyers darted between the larger Zarathi cruisers, striking at weak points before spinning away. Lieutenant Commander Eric Santos commanded one of these destroyers, the ship called Defiance. He was young, barely 30, with dark hair and steady hands. His crew trusted him completely. "Target their engine sections," he ordered. "Fire and move. Don't let them get a lock on us. Defiance weaved through the battle, her weapons striking again and again. A Zarathi cruiser tried to target them, but Santos twisted the ship in a maneuver that should have been impossible at that speed. Human reflexes were faster than the Zarathi had expected. Much faster. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "their targeting computers can't track us at this speed." Santos allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Let's show them what humans can do." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked the Zarathi. They took risks that should have been suicide. They attacked targets twice their size, and won. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting until the vessels literally fell apart around them. On the Zarathi flagship, Vexral watched the battle with growing disbelief. This was not how it was supposed to happen. These primitives should be running. They should be begging for mercy. Instead, they were winning. "High Commander," an officer reported, his voice shaking. "We have lost 231 ships. The humans have lost 42. Vexral stared at the numbers. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, things were even worse. The Zarathi had landed troops there to establish a forward base. 5,000 soldiers, the best warriors in the Empire. They expected to secure the moon within hours. They were met by human Marines. The Marines wore powered armor that made them faster and stronger than their natural bodies allowed. They used weapons that fired projectiles at velocities the Zarathi had never seen. And they fought with a savagery that shocked the alien soldiers. The Zarathi advanced in formation, as they always did. Disciplined, organized, following the tactics that had won them 17 worlds. The humans did not fight like that. They hid behind rocks and in craters. They attacked from unexpected directions. When a Zarathi unit thought it had cleared an area, soldiers appeared behind them and opened fire. Human snipers picked off officers from distances that should have been impossible. One Zarathi sergeant watched in horror as a human Marine, badly wounded, with green blood coating her armor, continued fighting. She had taken injuries that would have made any Zarathi soldier fall. She should have been dead. Instead, she kept pulling the trigger until her weapon was empty, then threw herself at the nearest enemy with her bare hands. "They don't stop," the sergeant whispered into his communicator. "They just don't stop." On Vareth Prime, the Galactic Council watched the battle feeds in stunned silence. Elder Counselor Thrain sat in his usual seat, his ancient face showing no emotion. Around him, representatives of a dozen species stared at the screens with their mouths open. "How is this possible?" someone whispered. No one answered. The Veleth journalist Siraven stood in the observation gallery, her recording device forgotten in her hands. She thought of the factory worker, Danny Marsh, and his words. "We've been killing each other for thousands of years. You think some lizards from space scare us?" She understood now. She understood what he meant. These beings had spent their entire history fighting each other, fighting their environment, fighting for survival. War was not something new to them. It was something they had lived with since the beginning of their species. And they had become very, very good at it. A young Veleth aide moved to stand beside Counselor Thrain. "Counselor," he whispered, "how are they doing this?" Thrain spoke quietly, his eyes never leaving the screens. "They have been at war with themselves for their entire history. Thousands of years of conflict, thousands of years of learning how to kill, how to survive, how to win against impossible odds. Every tactic they use today was bought with the blood of their ancestors." He paused. "We looked at them and saw a young species, primitive, soft. We were wrong. They are not soft. They are simply not at war. There is a difference, a very important difference." On the screen, another Zarathi ship exploded. The first day of battle ended. The Zarathi had lost 231 ships. Earth had lost 42. High Commander Vexrol, for the first time in his career, ordered his fleet to pull back and regroup. It was not a retreat. He refused to call it that. It was a tactical repositioning. But everyone knew the truth. Admiral Briggs stood on his bridge, looking at the damage reports. They had won the first day, but the cost was heavy. Thousands of human soldiers and sailors were dead. Families would receive terrible news. Children would grow up without parents. "Sir," an officer said, "the enemy is withdrawing." Briggs nodded. "They'll be back. They're too proud to accept this. They'll come back harder." He looked at the blue earth below. "And we'll be ready for them." The war had just begun, and humanity was just getting started. 3 days passed after the first battle. High Commander Vexrol used that time to reorganize his fleet. He studied the human tactics. He adjusted his formations. He would not be surprised again. When the Zarathi attacked the second time, they came with more caution. No more rushing forward blindly. They advanced slowly, destroying the hidden weapons platforms one by one. They used their superior numbers to overwhelm human defenses. It worked. The battle pushed closer to Earth. But the cost was terrible. Every day the Zarathi lost more ships than they had lost in decades of war. Human defenders fought for every inch of space. When a human ship was too damaged to fight, the crew would sometimes aim it at the largest enemy vessel and accelerate. They called it ramming. The Zarathi called it madness. By the 7th day, only 312 Zarathi ships remained from the original 800. They had reached Earth orbit, but they had paid a price that Vexrol never imagined possible. And there was something else, something that frightened him. Earth was building new ships. The humans had hidden shipyards and asteroids and moons throughout the solar system. Now they were producing vessels at a rate that seemed impossible. For every ship the Zarathi destroyed, 2 more appeared. The primitives were not running out of resources. They were just getting started. Vexrol stood on his bridge, looking at the beautiful blue planet below. He had lost more than half his fleet. His emperor was sending angry messages demanding results. His own officers were beginning to whisper doubts. There was only one option left. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Target their largest cities. Destroy their industrial centers. Show them what happens when they defy the Zarathi Empire." The order was carried out within minutes. Kinetic projectiles fell from space like the fists of an angry god. New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo, cities that held millions of people, centuries of history, countless dreams and hopes. They burned. The first strikes hit during the morning hours. People were going to work, taking children to school, living ordinary lives. Then the sky turned to fire. Admiral Briggs watched the bombardment from his command station. His face was stone, but inside something broke. He had known this might happen. They all had. But knowing and seeing were different things. "Casualties?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Millions, sir. The numbers are still coming in. But millions." Briggs closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were hard as iron. Activate the contingency. All across Earth's orbit, hidden platforms revealed themselves. Not weapons platforms like the ones in the asteroid belt. These were different. These held weapons the galaxy did not know humanity possessed. Antimatter warheads. The Galactic Council believed humans had not yet developed this technology. The humans had let them believe it. They had hidden their most terrible weapons, saving them for a moment like this. The warheads launched in perfect silence. 118 Zarathi ships disappeared in flashes of pure annihilation. Not explosions, annihilation. The antimatter converted their vessels into energy and nothing more. Vexrol screamed in rage as his tactical display filled with death. But that was not all. On the ground, in the ruins of the bombed cities, something unexpected happened. The survivors did not break. They did not run. They organized. In New York, firefighters pulled people from rubble, while volunteers distributed food and water. In Moscow, civilians formed militia units, arming themselves with whatever they could find. In Beijing, engineers began setting up communication networks to coordinate resistance. Emergency broadcasts went out across the planet. Ambassador Catherine Cole appeared on screens around the world. She was wounded, blood on her face, her elegant clothes torn and dirty. But her voice was steel. "People of Earth," she said, "today we have suffered a terrible blow. Our cities burn. Our people lie dead. The Zorathi believe they have broken us." She paused, her eyes burning with fury. "They are wrong. We have survived worse. We have survived plagues that killed millions. We have survived wars that destroyed entire nations. We have survived everything our own cruel history could throw at us. We did not break then. We will not break now. To the Zorathi, I say this: you have attacked our home. You have killed our families. You have made the worst mistake of your existence. Every soldier you send to our world will die here. Every ship you have will burn. And when this is over, when we have driven you back, we will find your homeworld, and we will remember what you did here today." The broadcast reached the Galactic Council chambers. 12 species watched in silence. Elder Counselor Thrain leaned forward in his seat. The human woman's words echoed in the great chamber. Around him, representatives began to whisper. "The Veleth are reconsidering their economic relationships with the Zorathi Empire," one delegate announced. "The Krath Collective is withdrawing our ambassador from Zorathi space," another said. One by one, species began distancing themselves from the invaders. The Zorathi had always been feared and respected. Now they were becoming something else. Pariahs. Monsters who had attacked a species that refused to surrender. Vexral did not care about politics. He cared about victory. "Prepare ground troops," he ordered. "If we cannot break them from orbit, we will take their planet piece by piece. Deploy all landing forces." 2 million Zorathi soldiers descended toward Earth in massive landing craft. The largest ground invasion in the history of the Empire. Vexral watched them go with satisfaction. No species had ever resisted the Zorathi ground forces. No species ever would. The landing craft touched down in 100 locations. Soldiers poured out, weapons ready, expecting to face broken survivors, begging for mercy. They found something else. In the ruins of Chicago, a Zorathi battalion advanced through empty streets. The buildings were damaged but still standing. Nothing moved. No resistance appeared. The commander felt uneasy. This was too quiet. Then the first shot rang out. A sniper, hidden in a destroyed building half a kilometer away, put a perfect round through the commander's eye. He was dead before he hit the ground. Chaos erupted. Soldiers scrambled for cover, but there was no cover. Every window, every doorway, every pile of rubble hid another human fighter. They appeared, fired, and vanished before the Zorathi could respond. IEDs exploded under advancing troops. Improvised weapons that the humans had built from destroyed technology. Simple, but deadly effective. A sergeant screamed into his communicator. "We need support. They're everywhere. They're—" His transmission cut off. In London, Paris, Sydney, and 100 other cities, similar scenes played out. The Zorathi had expected to fight soldiers. Instead, they fought everyone. Old men with rifles. Teenagers who had learned to shoot in the past week. General Patricia Webb coordinated the defense from a mobile command post that moved every few hours. She used tactics from every war in human history. The guerrilla warfare of Vietnam. The resistance movements of World War II. The urban combat doctrines developed in endless Middle Eastern conflicts. The Zarathi had never faced anything like this. They were trained to fight armies, not populations. They were trained to break enemy morale with overwhelming force. But you cannot break the morale of a species that has already survived everything. By the end of the first week on the ground, the Zarathi had taken nothing. They held no cities. They controlled no territory. Their casualties exceeded 1 million soldiers. Reports reached Vexral of units refusing to enter certain areas, of soldiers breaking under the constant attacks. Of the things humans did to prisoners. The High Commander looked at his tactical displays, and for the first time in his life, felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The primitives were not breaking. They were getting stronger. Every attack made them angrier. Every death made them more determined. And somewhere, a human stealth ship had been detected near the Zarathi homeworld. It could not threaten the planet. It was too small. But the message it broadcast was clear. We know where you live. When this is over, we are coming for you. Vexral realized something terrible. He had not invaded Earth. He had awakened something ancient and terrible. Something that had been sleeping peacefully among the stars. Something that now remembered what it truly was. The ground war continued for 3 more weeks. Each day was worse than the last for the Zarathi. They had conquered 17 worlds with their ground forces. They had broken species that were older and more advanced than humanity. They had never faced anything like this. Every city was a fortress. Every street was a killing ground. The humans used every tool, every trick, every dirty tactic their violent history had taught them. They hid bombs in rubble. They set traps in buildings. They attacked supply lines and communication centers. When Zarathi units thought they had cleared an area, fighters would appear from tunnels and sewers to attack again. General Patricia Webb moved her command post every 12 hours. The Zarathi tried to track her, but she was always gone before they arrived. She coordinated the resistance like a conductor leading an orchestra of death. One night, a Zarathi battalion cornered a group of human defenders in the ruins of a hospital in Madrid. 200 civilians, mostly wounded and sick, along with 30 fighters who had stayed to protect them. The Zarathi commander offered surrender. The fighters refused. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, every human defender was dead, but so were 400 Zarathi soldiers. The civilians had been evacuated through underground tunnels during the fighting. The Zarathi took the empty hospital. It exploded 20 minutes later, rigged with charges that the humans had left behind. Stories like this spread through the Zarathi ranks. Soldiers began to whisper that the humans were not natural, that they were demons, that they could not be killed, only slowed down. After 2 weeks, Zarathi casualties exceeded 1 million. After 3 weeks, the number passed 1.5 million. High command on the Zarathi homeworld demanded answers. Vexral had no answers to give. He stood in his command center, looking at maps covered in red marks. Every red mark was a disaster. Every report brought more bad news. "High Commander," an aide said nervously, "the humans have retaken the industrial zone in Detroit, and there are reports of new attacks in the Shanghai sector." Vexral said nothing. He stared at the maps and felt something he had never felt before: despair. Then came the message from home. A human stealth ship had been detected in the Zarathi system, again. This time it was larger. This time it had company. 3 ships, moving through Zarathi space like ghosts. They could not threaten the homeworld, not yet. But the message was clear. If this war continued, it would not stay on Earth. Humans learned fast. They adapted faster. Given time, they would build bigger ships, deadlier weapons. Given time, they would come for revenge. The Zarathi Emperor made a decision that shook the Empire to its core. He ordered a withdrawal. Vexral received the order with rage. He screamed. He broke furniture. He threatened to ignore the command and continue fighting. But his officers were done. His soldiers were broken. The fleet that had once numbered 800 ships now held less than 200. His ground forces had been cut in half. There was nothing left to fight with. On the 21st day of the invasion, the Zarathi began to leave. Across Earth, humans watched their enemies retreat. There was no celebration. There was no joy. The cost had been too high for that. Millions were dead. Cities lay in ruins. Entire regions would take decades to rebuild. But they had won. Admiral Briggs stood in the ruins of New York, looking up at the sky as the last Zarathi transport lifted off. His uniform was dirty and torn. He had not slept properly in weeks. General Webb stood beside him. She looked worse. "It's over," she said quietly. Briggs shook his head. "No, this part is over, but it's not finished. The galaxy knows about us now. They know what we can do, what we are. Is that good or bad?" "Both," Briggs said. "It's both." The aftermath changed everything. Within months, 17 species sent ambassadors to Earth, requesting alliance treaties. Species that had ignored humanity for decades suddenly wanted to be friends. They had watched the invasion. They had seen what humans could do when pushed. They wanted that power on their side. The Zarathi Empire did not survive the defeat. Vexral was executed for his failure. The Emperor faced rebellion from within. Within a decade, the Empire collapsed into civil war. Within 2 decades, it was gone, broken into a dozen small states that fought among themselves. Some called it justice. Others called it tragedy. The Zarathi had been conquerors, yes, but they had also been millions of ordinary people who had nothing to do with the invasion. Humans understood this better than most. They had done the same things to each other throughout history. Elder Counselor Thrain delivered his final assessment to the Galactic Council 6 months after the war ended. "We made a mistake," he said, his ancient voice filling the chamber. "We looked at humanity and saw a young species, soft, primitive. We thought they would break like so many others." He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. "We were wrong. Humanity is not soft. They simply choose not to be at war. There is a great difference. When they are at peace, they are kind, curious, creative. They build beautiful things. They dream great dreams. They reach out to the stars with wonder in their hearts." His voice hardened. "But when they are at war, they become something else. Something ancient. Something that their own species has spent thousands of years trying to control. They become killers without mercy, fighters without limits. They will sacrifice everything, including their own lives, to protect what they love." He took a breath. "I recommend that this council never give them reason to show us that side again. The galaxy is safer when humanity is at peace. Let us keep them that way." The council agreed. A new policy was established. Earth would be protected. Humanity would be respected. And everyone remembered what happened when they were not. Ambassador Catherine Cole accepted a seat on the council's security committee. She had earned it with blood and fire. When she spoke, the galaxy listened. Admiral Briggs retired to a small house in Montana. He never spoke of the battle again. He spent his days fishing in quiet streams and watching the sun set over the mountains. Some said he was haunted by what he had done. Others said he had simply found peace. General Webb continued to serve, rebuilding Earth's defenses. She made sure they would be ready if anyone was foolish enough to try again. And across the galaxy, a new saying spread among the spacefaring species. There are 3 rules for dealing with humans. First, do not attack their homeworld. Second, do not threaten their families. Third, If you break rules 1 or 2, pray to whatever gods you have. They will not help you, but at least you will die with something to hold on to. 10 years after the invasion, a young Zarathi woman visited Earth as part of a cultural exchange program. Her name was Varius, and her father had been a soldier in the invasion. He had never come home. She stood in the Memorial Plaza in New York, reading the names carved into the black stone walls. Millions of names. Humans and aliens who had died in the battle. An old human man sat on a bench nearby. He watched her for a long moment. "You're one of them, aren't you?" he asked. "The ones who came before?" Varys tensed, expecting hatred. "Yes, my father was a soldier in the invasion." The old man nodded slowly. His eyes were tired, but not angry. "My daughter died in the first bombardment," he said. Silence fell between them. The wind moved through the plaza, carrying the scent of flowers from the memorial gardens. Then the old man spoke again. "Would you like some coffee? There's a cafe around the corner. Best coffee in the city." Vera stared at him. She did not understand. After everything that happened, you would share coffee with me? It was a sad smile, but also somehow warm. "The war's over, kid. That's the other thing about humans. We know how to stop fighting too. Eventually. It takes us a while sometimes, but we figure it out." He stood up slowly, his joints complaining. "Come on. My name is George. I'll tell you about my daughter if you tell me about your father. Maybe we can find some peace together." Varys followed him through the bustling streets. Around them, humans and aliens walked side by side. Different species, different histories, living together. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth endured, and humanity, as always, moved forward, carrying their scars, remembering their dead, but still reaching for the stars, because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they forgave, and they never, ever gave up.